what you focus on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Lady K Chat podcast. You are here with your favorite host, Lady K. I am the one that don't hold her tongue back. I do that fire. I deliver with fire, but I always tell you guys I give it with love. So I appreciate you. So appreciate me. Today we have a hot topic that we want to talk about. We want to talk about toxic sons and mother relationships. Ooh, that right there that's a mess right there. Because as we can see, it there's a lot of men out there that got mommy issues. But I don't want to talk about this subject by myself, so I invited this gentleman right here. He's a returning guest. I want everyone to help me welcome Carl Serette. He is the CEO of Carl Coaching. Welcome, Carl.
Hey, how you doing, my sister? Thanks for having me back again.
You are welcome, Carl. It's a blessing. I always enjoy having you back for the show. You always bring good value, and we always drop nuggets, and I think we always have a good time. So today, Carl, oh my gosh, where can I start off about the toxic relationships between sons and mothers? So when I think about this, right? Because I'm not perfect, and I had my son at a young age, right? So I'm gonna come from the space of being a young mother, and then sometimes too, you just reiterating what you was taught. So I was raised with a lot of beautiful women, and I like to say that I was raised in a multicultural household. I'm sorry, multi-generational household. So people say, "What's multi-generational?" I had the opportunity of being raised with my mother and my grandmother. And then also too, I seen them do it all. I see them do everything. Yeah, there was men that was involved, like my mom, she has a significant other, but for the most part, I seen her do everything. So then me as a new mom and a young mom, I started duplicating the same thing. So sometimes I believe the behavior that we can just do it all. It can start from your environment. And it's like, yes, people are doing what there are. I'm going to say a lot of people are in survival mode, right? So in survival mode, you're just doing whatever you have to do just to keep your family together. And sometimes we don't realize the negative that can come with it. I can do it by myself. I think we had this conversation on our other show about having that attitude, I can do it all by myself. And then when you have sons and they see their mothers doing everything, then they think the woman they meet is supposed to do the same thing. So I just think it's just a domino effect because of what was taught and what you're doing. And then, later down the line, you try to break the cycle.
I agree with everything you're saying. It's the absolute truth. I was thinking about that before we talked about this show, when you said, you wanted to have this discussion. It really is. It's generational curses that continue to flow down without it being broken. But see, we can only break it when we can actually identify it and identify that it's an issue, because there are people that will say, oh, I don't have that issue. I don't have this problem. And then, you're sitting there from the outside looking and like, yeah, I can see it. I can see that this is an issue, going on, but it really does. So when you have those households, like you said, when you get in there, you're independent, you're doing all this stuff, you don't see how that's draining you, to be who you're supposed to be, because you're married as a man by your side, make sure she's happy. And I think a lot of times we get not away from the way relationships and marriages supposed to really be as a person, and so it ends up being a single mom with her kids, and so and she's tired. Even though I was doing the things I need to do, I had no identity. My identity burnt out. She's so again that trickles my children. So like you said, and so coming out, looking at it and saying, I understood who my identity is. Why I know why do I have to do anything when I or who he really was supposed to be, who I should become as a person. So now I have to find some zone that he doesn't need to operate in, and he overcompensates. Right. And he tries to do everything, and then he ends up with a wife who does nothing. And now he becomes upset, angry, but because of what he saw his mom, he's got two paths to choose. Really, it's three. He either goes to the side where he's expecting a woman to do everything, or he's got the side where he's, I'm going to overcompensate, instead of really finding the balance in the middle. But the middle's not taught, because we only really deal with the two on the outside.
Right.
So that's something, again, like you said, when you're sitting here watching something, you're just like, okay, well, this is normal, you know.
Right. So I want to go back to, because sometimes people say when they hear the word toxic, sometimes, you are not in awareness of what you're doing. So I just want to kind of like just give some ideas on what I'm speaking about. So this can be the mother, like you said, that's overwhelmed, right? So because she's overwhelmed and she's doing everything herself, she may take it out on the kid. She may yell at him. She may require him to do some things, and some of those things he has to grow up fast. Like say, like if there's other kids in the house and he's the oldest and she has to work, she goes, well, I need you to watch your siblings for you while I go out here and work. And she's working 2-3 jobs. Then she's coming home. She don't have time to spend with you. So there's a lot of people that get this messed up. You're in the home, but you're not present for your kids. And I have no problem saying that. I realized at one point I was in the home, but I wasn't fully present because I had so much on my mind. I'm concerned, in, do I pay the light bill or do I pay my car note? And there are a lot of women that's going through that. And then because I'm so frustrated, I'm a yell. And that's,
Yep.
Yelling is therapeutic for me, but not realizing yelling is therapeutic for you. But two things you don't realize. One, that can actually affect your body. That's not a good thing because that's adding stress. And then two, what you're projecting onto the kids. So now all the kids know when mommy gets upset, she yells. And like you said, Carl, it can go into a relationship where later he can be in a relationship where he has a yeller. You just yelling, and that's abuse right there. And that's what I'm saying. Women don't realize that is abuse. So for me, again, I came into my awareness and I realized some of the things that I was doing was not right, and I wanted to correct myself. And I believe, you can get to that stage of your life. You can try to correct it, especially if you got that child that's older now and you're trying to correct it, they already made up in their mind, like, listen, that was you, that was that old you, and they have not accepted you. Or you can do as a parent is say, you know what, at least I'm at this stage where I recognize myself and all I can do is continue to move forward. It's not your job and your responsibility to make your child to see that you have changed. They have to be, have to want that relationship with you. They have to want to say, well, I'm gonna give my mom time. If they can't, you can't force that.
No.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard, and I was looking at some things, and they were saying, when a mom is in that toxic stage, like you said, regardless of where it's coming from, whether she's burnt out, they said most toxic mothers come from a toxic environment. So they were raised in a toxic environment to begin with. I think the numbers, they did a data poll on parenting, and I think it was 29% of mothers are considered toxic, and 16% of fathers are considered toxic.
Wow.
So those are, even to me, even though they sound low, they still sound too high. But like you said, the effects of, like you said, the yelling and different things like that, they said when mothers are in that toxic state, they lack empathy. They're inconsistent in expressing their love. They don't have the understanding. They don't have warmth. And so when you're dealing with all this, now it puts the son into a position that he's got bad codependency when he grows up, what we call attachment issues, unhealthy coping mechanisms he ends up with because of that. And again, it's just whatever the dynamic was that caused that, he's in these things. Now he's got difficulty bonding with someone because he didn't have that maternal bond with his mom because of he had to grow up quick. He had to do all these things. He's got excessive demands put on him, all these different things. And I don't think we realize what that does. And it actually also affects his brain development.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that, so these are some of the things from certain studies and that have been out there, how this affects young boys. It's really more that the studies are focused there. It doesn't deal with a lot on how the daughters are affected, but it really does deal with more on how the boys are affected. And then it makes them it puts them in a place where they're unable to lead and lead properly. They can lead, but they just don't know how to lead properly. So now they're running households, and more households are being destroyed, and then we have bigger issues, and then they have mommy issues, all these different things. They're still attached to their mom versus attached to their wife. you know.
I want to piggyback when you said sometimes that man might get stuck on because of what they saw their mom do.
Mhm.
I shared this before, and I'm going to share this again. I have dated a guy. He's a wonderful guy, and he kind of had the same proposition like you had. Like he was able to see his parents be married for over 40 years. But while they're in their marriage, he never saw his parents argue. Like, his parents took their discussions behind closed doors, but, never in front of the kids. And I thought that was a great thing because that is healthy. However, in that household, the expressions of, I love you, or being vulnerable, or just, in that emotions wasn't really given. So when I said to him, like, I'm at a point of my life, because now this is the hill, this is the evolved Kalima. So I'm saying, I need someone. I'm not asking for you to how can I say this? I'm not asking for you to lovey-dovey on me all the time, but I do want some type of affection. You can say how you feel sometimes. You
Right.
can say. So he wasn't that person. He wasn't used to that, and he kept saying to me, "Well, my mom." I said, "Well, let me tell you something right now. I'm not your mother." Because he said, my mom and my father, I barely hear them say, I love you to one another. He said, but my mom said she knew that my dad loved her. And that's fine because that worked from them. And they come from a different generation. I said, but for right now, I know what I need. And I need someone that can be open with me and be vulnerable. But that means you don't trust yourself, because vulnerability does not mean that you put yourself in a position to be taken advantage of. You know how much to give and how much not to. That's you trusting yourself. But I can already tell that he did not trust himself, because him himself still needed some healing. But when that took place, that opened up my eyes and say he's not ready for someone like me. Because
Mm.
I'm at that, and when I say someone like me, because I was at that healing place. It has
Right.
nothing to do, I think I'm better than you or all of this. No, it has everything to do where I evolved to, and if we are matching, and we were not, because you was not ready to give that part of you. And it's okay to say, you know what, this ain't working, because that's exactly what I did. I said, you know what, let's just be friends, because I wanted to be his friend. I didn't want to
Right.
feel like I'm abandoning you, but you're not ready for a relationship with me, but I'm gonna still be a friend to you. And I think people need to come into that maturity space where they can recognize that and just do what's best for you.
Yeah, that's big that you were able to do that and see that with him. And I think that's one of the things I talk about, with some young men. It's unfortunate the situations they go through, that whether, like you said, he was in a 2-parent household, but it affects how they date. And it affects them down the road. And I've said this before, sometimes mothers don't realize that they're setting their sons up only to date them.
Yes.
And so he can only date a woman like his mom, and I know everybody's like, oh yeah, find somebody like your mom or find somebody like your dad, for the daughters. And that's not always good, because
Right.
mom and dad are not really healed, they just coping. And so that might not be a good thing to deal with on that. So that's one of those things I look at, when you see some, they're looking for their mother in a woman, like you talking about, somebody's going to do everything and do all the dishes and cook and clean, come home and take care of them and clean it. They're 40 years old and they want their snot wiped off their nose, by their wife, and like their mom did. And they're still looking for that, but that because they came from that environment where they only saw that, not understanding that that may not be the best thing to look for somebody that's like your mama.
Right.
That may not be a good thing to look for somebody as a daughter to, for your daddy. And I think we miss that, a lot of times. And so when I hear women saying, well, he just can't let his mom go. He just, he's like his mom this, his mom that. And that's that he didn't have the actual bonding that he needed early on. And now he's rebonded in a bad way with his mom later on in life. And so he can't let her go. So he's basically, his mom is front and center in the middle of their marriage. That's dangerous.
Oh, and it's so funny. You're in my head, Carl, because you're right there. Because I was going to take it to that space that men who are married, and I hear a lot of women that say, "Well, he always put his mom first." That's a dangerous zone, because your woman, once you're married, like we already know in the Bible, you leave and you come together
Leave.
as one. It does not mean that your mama is still not your favorite girl, but your wife comes first, in that household because that's who you dedicated yourself to. So I think you have to know how to separate the two. And some men do not know how to separate the two. And I know someone right now that's going through that issue. And I'm like, well, listen, I need to seek counseling, but the problem is a husband don't want to go to counseling. And I'm like, that's a problem right there. So it's like you have this person who doesn't want to change. So it's like, what do you do? Because now you're in this marriage where it's a constant battle between the wife and the mom. I'm gonna say this though. I'm gonna say this: when I was married, oh my gosh, I had the best mother-in-law ever. Okay, what she did, she respect our marriage. She let me know when I'm wrong. She let him know when he's wrong, and then she just stayed in her place. I love that. And not a lot of women got to experience that, but I appreciate what my mother-in-law gave to me, when I was married to her son. But I know there's plenty of other people that's not their story. And it's like, I don't even know what advice to give you if one, if that man is not willing to go to counseling, and two, he's not willing to check his mom when his mom get out of place with his wife. That's hard right there. How does a man deal with that, Carl?
And so I had a terrible relationship with my mother-in-law. She's one of the reasons why my marriage ended. I had a wonderful relationship with my father-in-law, which was the reverse before he passed. But yeah, so that there's so much that you just said. One thing I'll say is too, I know a lot of men are anti-counseling because they're taught that if that's a sign of weakness. Mm-hmm. And I see it out there. I see it in the social media world. It's put out there. If you're going to counseling, you're just and so that's why I try to make it normal. I try to normalize it. When I went through my divorce and what took place, it was traumatizing to me. And it was, for me, for the sake of myself and my sons, I had to go and get counseling, to heal myself. Not even just to date because of what took place. And this is even before the marriage before we were even separated. What was going on, I had to go get that. But I implore men today, go get counseling, seek counseling. It's not a bad thing. But when you think about the dynamic, there's not a lot of male counselors out there. There's not a lot of male coaches out there. Most of the male coaches that are out there are coaching women. And so I get on them. Trust me, I get on them. I call them. I'm like, you're teaching women to do all this stuff. What about the men? Right. What are you doing for the men? Because I don't care how much you can have 1,000 prepared women. If you don't have 1,000 prepared men, these women are going to still be lonely. And I said, but y'all are just telling women this, and this, what they want to hear. And I'm like, but forgive me with this. I don't trying to get in trouble. I'm just being real about it. Most of these men have never even been married. So how are you coaching women and you ain't never been married? But that's another topic. So back to the mother-in-law situation, the mom in front. A lot of men, and as I talk to them, they feel guilty because there was no dad there. So like you said, mom did everything. Mom took care of me when I was sick. She worked at 2 jobs. She was tired. So I have to repay my mama now because of everything she did for me. And then you have some mothers who are like, that woman better never come in front of me because I was here. Remember that. I was here when you were sick. I took you to the Little League games. I took you this. That she wasn't here for that. And so he feels guilty. And so mama stays in front of the wife because the mom has put herself in that role to say, and that's why I go back to say some men can only date their mamas.
Right.
And so that's where this sounds like the situation you're talking about. He's there. I don't know the full upbringing he went through, but I know a lot of men who have dealt with that and now trying to course correct that with their moms, and then the mother, I had one guy call back. He was like, man, he said, my mom broke down crying on the phone. She'd stopped speaking to me. I mean, she went like 9 months not speaking to her son because he course corrected. And she didn't want to see her grandkids when they were born. He had twins during that time period. So she cut him off because he course corrected and said, my wife comes before you. And she's like, that's not right. Your mom always comes first. And so, my ex tries to do that to my sons. And I'm just like, no, we're not doing that. We're not having that conversation. She's like, well, they don't do this for me. That's not their job. You're asking them to be your husband, and we're not going to have that conversation. I was your husband. You chose to leave and thought the grass was greener someplace else. So they're not going to be your husband. They're not going to buy you husband things. That was my role. You no longer have that. And so I tell my sons that, not in disrespectful way to their mom. Take care of your mom, be there, support, do the things, like that. But these are not your jobs. These are not your roles. And your mom does not come in front of your wives when you get married.
Lady Kay.